Hello everyone, Don here, your pop culture boy, aka your pop culture archaeologist.
Pull up in the Sri Lanka. What?
It's no secret that the music industry has glamorized a lot of negative things through the lens of marketing and other ploys attached to visuals and song lyrics. Somehow things of a more risky or negative nature even tend to hit different, sending shockwaves around the world and affecting audiences for generations, in comparison to positive tropes, which can have a visceral effect on the public as well, but in a lot of cases tend to be less desired and less promoted by the industry. The other day I was thinking about the impact artists used to have prior this decade and reminiscing how influential they were. Not that artists aren't influential today, but there was something different in the water when it comes to artists prior 2020 or 2018 to be exact. The entertainers definitely had us in a perpetual chokehold back then, with how acts were able to command attention and garner an audience through the medium of storytelling, amplified by sensory overloading, stimulating visuals. What stood out to me was how toxicity in relationships and overall dysfunction was romanticized, normalized, and turned into an appealing aesthetic to drive sales and hooking audiences. So for this video, I want to explore the normalization of the toxic love trend, how artists package destructive emotions as desirable for commercial success, the effects this had on audiences, and the subtle resurgence of the trope within Gen Z pop stars. I am Don, your pop culture boy. Let's get into it.
Catastrophic.
While I, and I'm sure many of you watching, would love to blame everything bad on fictitious materials, especially when it comes to this topic of media romanticizing toxic behaviors in relationships, unfortunately, art in a lot of cases imitate real life situations. Before we get into music's contribution, let's first shift our sights towards the film industry, mainly Hollywood, or as I like to say, old ass Hollywood. One of the earliest examples of Hollywood making toxicity attractive is the real life situation of the American couple and outlaws Bonnie and Clyde turned into a thrilling romance spectacle for the silver screen. The notorious duo from the 1930s have carved out a wild legacy in the entertainment industry. Their stories spun into movies, songs, and books with a romantic glow that hides their messy, tragic reality. Their tales steeped in blood and crime became a cultural obsession thanks to mostly the 1967 biographical film Bonnie and Clyde, directed by Arthur Penn, starring Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway. That movie didn't just tell their story, it turned a gritty crime spree into a love story for the ages, shaping how we see outlaws. And the film was a critical success. Back then, Hollywood usually painted crooks as straight-up bad guys, no depth, no charm. But Penn's take, with Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty as Bonnie and Clyde, gave them this unhinged romantic edge. Their on-screen depiction made you cheer for them, even knowing they were robbing banks and committing murders. The movie hit hard with 1960s youth, who saw Bonnie and Clyde as charming and attractive rebels navigating a broken system. Their slow-motion demise at the end of the movie sealed their fates as legend in pop culture, turning a brutal ambush into something almost beautiful, disregarding that the real couple left a trail of bodies and broken lives. Through generations, we continue to see Bonnie and Clyde being portrayed as couple goals, Serge Gainsborough and Brigitte Bardot crooning about them in their 1966 song Bonnie and Clyde, covered with a seductive backdrop. Later, we saw Jay-Z and Beyonce embodying the outlaws in their 2002 Ride or Die track, '03 Bonnie and Clyde. And this theme of Ride or Die was even incorporated into the couple's co-headlining tours On the Run in 2014 and its follow-up On the Run 2 tour in 2018. Even Broadway got in on it with the 2011 musical Bonnie and Clyde, playing up the romance while soft-pedaling the gore. These stories lean hard into the myth of two lovers against the world, conveniently forgetting Bonnie's desperation or Clyde's reckless streak. It's like the entertainment industry can't resist polishing their rough edges. The entertainment industry's obsession with Bonnie and Clyde shows us how much we love romanticizing outlaws, especially when we can slap a tragic love label on them. It's easier to sell star-crossed rebels than a messy, toxic duo. Their story sticks around because it feeds our craving for tales of wild freedom and undying love. But the real Bonnie and Clyde, they're a reminder that the line between passion and disaster is razor thin, no matter how pretty the movies make it look. While it's possible some artists had no intentions of romanticizing the tragedies of a dysfunctional relationship, the end product may tell a different story, depending on how it's interpreted, of course. In 2009, Lady Gaga released Bad Romance, one of the most influential tracks of the late 2000s. With its nonsense catchy syllables, twisted lyrics that correlates with someone tweaked out of their mind chanting about being obsessed with a bad romance, it's easy to get entranced as the lyrics are dressed in this posh German house dance pop provocative production while ignoring all the red flags. Now let's dive into some of the lyrics on Bad Romance. I want your ugly, I want your disease. I want your everything as long as it's free. I want your love. You know that I want you, and you know that I need you. I want it bad, your bad romance. I want your horror, I want your design. Cause you're a criminal as long as you're mine. I want your love, 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 love. I want your love. I want your psycho, your vertigo shtick. Want you in my rear window, baby, you're sick. These lyrics point out all the dysfunctions of the main protagonist's relationship. Rather rejecting these bad traits, they lean into them as a safe haven. In the second verse, Gaga uses the word horror as a metaphor, conveying acceptance of her love interest's dark side. She then goes on to reference psychological horrors such as Psycho, Vertigo, and Rear Window, all directed by Alfred Hitchcock. In its bridge, Gaga even recites the line, I want your love and I want your revenge in French, which is considered the language of love. While many would argue that the song on its own is more of an exploration of the complexities of a bad romance rather than a romanticization, on the other hand, in regards to its music video, it's less clear as the lines between glorifying and exploring a toxic relationship blurs significantly, which might be kind of genius on their part as it keeps the conversation regarding its true meaning on a continuous loop. I'd be truly terrifying if the choreography wasn't so campy, but who can be bothered with running away from a bunch of monsters doing enthusiastic jazz hands? Said Elle Hunt from Enemy in 2019. The music video is a dance number, which makes sense as it's a dance track, but it's also a celebration of fashion and has this alluring/glamorous vibe. With multiple product placements, the exploration point hits less, while we witness her being prepared for slaughter as she was sold or forced into this toxic arrangement, or to be more frank, sold into sex slavery. All the while, she's singing about wanting the bad romance. Maybe a short film in the beginning or in its conclusion would have sold the exploration idea more, but then again, seeing the track was certified 11 times platinum and winning multiple awards in a commercial sense, maybe they made the right decision. While Gaga is definitely a significant influence of the toxic romance trope where it leans into the glorifying territory in a visual pleasing aspect, I think Rihanna took this mantra to another level, making it more of a trend and an aesthetic, more than Gaga ever did. I'm talking about We Found Love. In Gaga's Bad Romance track, where she has a sense of caution in her tone. Yeah, it's extremely catchy, but it has more of a rawness to it. However, on Rihanna's We Found Love, released in 2011, written and produced by Calvin Harris, and is currently both artists' most streamed songs on Spotify, is a song about finding love in a hopeless place, meaning their love was built on shaky foundation. However, Rihanna sang angelic harmonies while being backed by a pristine, magical composition in comparison to Gaga's Bad Romance harsher aesthetic. To its core, We Found Love is an EDM track that low-key, high-key takes influence from dancehall, with a simple, concise lyrical formula like most popular EDM-driven songs of the 10s. Also, I want to say that the EDM era of the early 10s is one of my favorite music eras of all time. Matter of fact, scratch that. The EDM era of the 10s is the best music era of all time. I don't care and I will die on this hill. Now, many believe the track is symbolic or it represents the past relationship between Rihanna and Chris Brown. Their relationship was celebrated and seen as the quintessential relationship for young adults in the 2000s. They looked good together and seemed like they were genuinely in love. But as we all know, that came to an end after their 2009 altercation, which resulted in the notorious TMZ photos of Rihanna's badly bruised face released in the public, and Chris Brown pleading guilty to felony assault and serving 5 years probation and 6 months community service. So on first listen, We Found Love seems like an allegory for a tragic love story, especially with the lines, "We found love in a hopeless place," and its pre-chorus, "It's the way I'm feeling, I just can't deny, but I gotta let it go," along with the music video's male lead who had a striking resemblance to Chris Brown. In 2011, Melina Matsoukas, the director of the We Found Love music video, which currently has over 1 billion views on YouTube, told Pitchfork that Rihanna was not playing into the Chris Brown narrative for We Found Love. The intention is not for it to be Chris or anything related to that relationship, she told Pitchfork. The visuals for We Found Love encapsulates themes of a tragic love story, stacked with joyous raves, intense highs and low lows, and the periodic visceral attack on the senses during the song's instrumental break. That includes use, gambling, and economic collapse, told through a hypnotic cinematic lens. Personally, I don't think it was Rihanna's intention to romanticize toxic elements, seeing they made it clear it wasn't about Chris Brown, even though it clearly was. But I understand why she never addressed it, because that would result in more accusations and scrutiny, and I think that was the right thing to do. That aside, with the colors and how entrancing the visuals are, I can see how someone who doesn't know better can end up thinking that's what's supposed to happen when they are in love, which is now making me come to the conclusion that maybe music videos aren't the best medium for this type of storytelling, as there is limited time. Also, the fact that they are trying to make hits at the same time, which tends to muddy the actual message. And while yes, at the end of the video, she walked away from the relationship, it's probably the least memorable part, because when I hear people talk about the video, no one seems to remember the ending. In 2012, the singer released the pop ballad Diamonds, which leans into the toxic trope as well. Now, while Diamonds is a better representation of telling the story of tragic love over glamorizing it, when compared to, the dance-themed We Found Love. But I still think it deserves mentioning ever so slightly in regards to the music video. While the music video is more of a healing process for the singer, however, with the inclusion of the hand scene that is covered in tattoos similar to Chris Brown's, and the fact that she is surrounded by destruction, the room falling apart, and her standing in the riot but still being at peace, can send the wrong message. Again, I know it's about healing and embracing yourself after the relationship ended, but her depiction as being calm, just basking in the ambience, and being comfortable under these circumstances is a little bit romanticizing in my opinion. And I get it, she didn't want to be a victim, and I think that's what ultimately blurs the line.
This is a riot scene that we're shooting, and it's supposed to represent this chaos, and in the midst of it, I'm somehow at peace, and it's really supposed to represent being in love, and that being something so blissful that no matter what's going on around you or in the world, it can't take away from that.
Also, let's not forget 2 years prior, Rihanna and Eminem got extreme backlash for normalizing DV with their collaborated effort, Love the Way You Lie. But I must say, with this one, I completely disagree, as that shit is more of a PSA than sending the message that it's okay to be violent. If anything, it makes you want to stay away from situations like that, and if it gives anyone any ideas, they probably had that thought prior. Moreover, Rihanna definitely made toxic love attractive and a trend visually with her music videos, in my opinion, causing a chain reaction in music as other artists started to lean into the trope as well, even when toxicity isn't the real focal point, only borrowing some visual aesthetics of We Found Love and Diamonds, or making the toxic love story the backdrop of their music videos entirely, word for word, bar for bar. Taylor Swift adopted this concept in the music video for her 2012 single, I Knew You Were Trouble. It even had a monologue in the beginning like Rihanna's We Found Love. It also had a similar storyline of good girl falling for bad boy, ignoring all the red flags, reckless driving, fireworks, and raving, making the toxic trope more alluring, less cautionary. Most of the elite popular artists who tend to dabble in the toxic aesthetics never make it a significant part of their artistry, as it's a dangerous mantra and is not easily pulled off. And also because who wants to be depressed all the time? Well, here enters Lana Del Rey, who is probably the saddest artist of the 21st century. Throughout Lana's career, she has been accused of romanticizing abuse, toxic relationships, the whole 9 yards. And while she has somewhat calmed down in recent times, she is still regarded as one of the most toxic glamorizing artists today. And it's interesting that she is still using it in, this ultra feminist be a girl's era, and is still successful while covered in a veil of mystique. In spite of these claims, Lana and many of her fans argued she can only sing about her life experience and what's authentic to her. Speaking to Pitchfork in 2017, she recoiled at the mention of the line, "He hit me hard and it felt like a kiss," from her 2014 track Ultraviolence. I don't like it. I don't sing that line anymore. Having someone be aggressive in a relationship was the only relationship I knew. I'm not going to say that was 100% true, but I do feel comfortable saying what I was used to was a difficult, tumultuous relationship. And it wasn't because of me. It didn't come from my end. Lyrics such as, "Come and take a walk on the wall side, let me kiss you hard in the pouring rain," paired with the lines, "You and I, we were born to die," from the track of the same name, paint a picture of a passionate yet doomed relationship, often tied to a dangerous or unattainable partner, interpreted by some as a nod to a gangster figure. Born to Die's music video amplifies this with its imagery of a lavish yet tragic romance. Lana Del Rey in a white dress with an American flag, juxtaposed with a brooding lover and a fatal car crash, evoking a cinematic, almost fatalistic allure. And that's what frustrates a lot of people as Lana paints these rhetorics with a beautiful brush, lessening the blow of danger. I feel like the male equivalent to Lana is The Weeknd, who also made toxicity a major aesthetic in his music since his inception in the early 10s, and still does to this day. Plus, the two have collaborated on a number of songs that dive into toxicity in a tragic, glamorous way. While men such as The Weeknd, Future, Drake, and others who dabble in toxicity, while they are criticized as well, I must admit they do not share the same level of persistent scrutiny or responsibility for the effects it may have in society. But I also feel like there is a double standard at play here. For example, both men and women tend to care more about what women say in regards to potentially dangerous rhetorics in relationships, while on the other hand, the conversations surrounding men doing the same thing tend to be more relaxed, quickly quelling the conversation, meaning women aren't granted the same level of grace when it comes to this particular topic of romanticizing toxicity. Like Lana, The Weeknd also has a lot of advocators arguing that his toxic music is more of a mirror of his own life, not a green light for bad behavior. Emma Garland from Vice.com described his music as a dark strain of R&B that exhales sleaze like a strong perfume. His songs are steady motel rooms dimly lit through a red cloth thrown over a single lampshade, a cigarette burning out in a glass ashtray, and underwear strewn across the floor. They are stories of pleasure and pain, desire and regret. They are cloudy nights, cold mornings, and walks of so-called shame. His is the music of knowing better and doing it anyway. Songs like The Hills, released in 2015, and Heartless, released in 2019, depict relationships marked by excess manipulation and emotional turmoil, with lyrics such as, "I only call you when it's 5:30, and I'm a moth to the flame. That's how I got my name," suggesting a cycle of toxic dependency. Many publications have noted that his cinematic videos featuring dark, hedonistic visuals often glamorize these dynamics, potentially normalizing unhealthy behaviors for listeners. His After Hours and Dawn FM eras, with tracks like Blinding Lights and Take My Breath, amplify this with narratives of obsession and danger, leading some to argue they portray toxicity as alluring. While these publications don't always call it out explicitly as normalizing, but the subtext is there, especially when you read between the lines or just listen to his music for yourself. In the wake of artists such as The Weeknd, Rihanna, and Lana Del Rey infusing toxic mantras in their art in a glamorous light, it now seems like the audience and artists even are now somewhat got used to that method and is now becoming more gutter. And we are now shifting into the battle of the sexes type music. No more tragic love stories. For example, Chris Brown saying these hoes ain't loyal in 2014 while dancing his ass off. Or the City Girls saying real ass bitch give a fuck about a nigga in 2019. And the list goes on. Now, sure, the fuck these hoes and fuck these niggas, less covert, less glamorizing messages has been in music for a long time, mainly with smaller artists from the 2000s, of whom I'm not talking about here. More raw depictions in music from more mainstream acts have always been a thing, but it was covert. Presently, I'm not seeing a lot of glamorizing elements that once ruled the musical landscape, with the interjection of artists such as Cardi B, Drake, Future, and even SZA, all whom of which are more direct and overall pure toxic. With the strong backlash Lana Del Rey has received for allegedly glorifying toxic behaviors in relationships, it's causing a more subtle version of the trope to emerge within Gen Z, where it's more covert and more open for interpretation than before. Billie Eilish did this on her Birds of a Feather, where instead of painting a picture of a doomed relationship, plays more on a confession of love. But where it gets dark is mainly in the lyrics, where she professed her love using death as a metaphor and as the ultimate commitment, which can be a little toxic. Meanwhile, in the music video, she is being puppeteered as her body crashed through drywalls and work core items to match themes of destruction. Meanwhile, as she's, being, flung around the workplace, she has a smile on her face. She's very much, at ease and just basking in the ambience. So the Birds of a Feather music video match themes of destruction while being at peace. Something we see a lot in other videos that has claims of making toxicity attractive. While the message is dark, it's also very subtle on a Nintendo-esque beat, but it sounds so personal, which makes it hard to construe as influential in a negative way. In Tyla's recent music video for her song Bliss, a love song with a somber tone, I wouldn't necessarily say the lyrics are toxic, but the visuals is where we find her in a desert or this apocalyptic setting, performing this love song, but at the same time crying and shaking ass as doomsday approaches. And then there is Sabrina Carpenter, who is toxic, but it's her comedic take on the trope that makes it a nuanced approach where she comes off as this new age trash-talking girl next door. We saw this on her Please 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 music video, which also has a Bonnie and Clyde theme to it, and her most recent Man-Child, which is expected to debut at #1 on the Hot 100. In that video, there's a lot going on. There's explosions. There is just, so many distractions and just so many destruction in the music video, but it's all fun and exciting while she's praising her lover for being a man-child. In both settings, she is portrayed as the one in control, like an updated version of the man-eater trope. So it's like Gen Z is exploring toxicity in a completely different way, but nonetheless making it look attractive for their audience. In no way, shape, or form is this an advocacy for the cancellation of music or any forms of media that choose to commercialize toxicity. While yes, it can be viewed as romanticizing or normalizing, I don't believe that's the intent of most. And personally, I don't have a problem indulging in this type of genre. However, where the real issue lies, in my opinion, is when this type of art intersects with capitalism, creating an obligation to be commercially viable and to trend for long periods on social media, achieved through sensationalized tactics to make things more watchable or exciting, in favor of the raw truth. On some level, I do feel bad for artists whose work get accused for making, trauma seems acceptable, but at the end of the day, I don't feel too bad because a lot of them make the decision to be misconstrued by favoring virality and exaggerations. And to be real, the audience loved this twist of romance and tragic traumas, as it gives a lot of us something to talk about. So for artists today who tend to be more raw and straightforward with their toxicity, I also have some respect for them. At least they aren't sugarcoating it. What do you think? I am Don-Anjelo Pop Culture Boy, and I will see you in the next one.